Great, thank you so much to all of our panellists for that introduction. So we will now move into a more discussion between us all, and we'll be answering some of the questions that are already coming in from the audience. We've already had a really good one from Vicky in North Wales, and it says, what would you say are the top 3 things for customer engagement at times of a national pandemic? And how do we get our messages to our tenants and be seen when there's so many other messages that are equally important? Who would like to pick that up? Maybe could I ask Shona to comment on that first?
So the first thing is being honest with people that we don't know what's going on. I think a lot of the time people expect everybody to expect housing associations to have all the answers, but this is such a strange situation that we're experiencing right now. We need to be honest with people that the people who are running the services are human just like them. So explaining what's going on as much as you possibly can in different ways, making sure that you're reaching people in the ways that they want to be contacted. Text messages are gold at the moment because they're so quick and people are likely to read them. If you're going to be using social media, try and tag as many different things that people actually really look at. So I never see housing trending on Twitter. Why not? Because we don't talk about things in the same way that other parts of the world speak. We need to start breaking down some of the jargon. So when we are speaking about things that are really happening right now, try and find ways of latching onto what people actually understand. And the other thing is explaining what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what else you considered, because some people are going to be thinking, oh, they're not giving us any information. Maybe there's a reason we haven't given information. For example, if you're going to send out a letter explaining what you're currently doing, that information could take 2 to 3 days to get out to an actual resident and then be completely wrong. So if you explain to people that you're going to be wary about the information you're giving to them, that's going to put them instead to know where do they get information from and think, oh no, they are thinking about what they can do, but we're going to be a bit more cautious about not giving the incorrect information. So explaining the what else is always going to be key for people at the moment.
Yes,
yeah, I think I'd just add to that, I think that's absolutely spot on. And I think what I'd add to that is not being afraid to say, do you know what we don't know and we're not able to tell you. I think sometimes we like to be able to give messages to our residents, be really clear, be able to justify things, and we're in such a strange time that we're unable to, and I don't think we should be afraid to say that. There's nothing wrong with saying this is how it is at the moment, we don't know anymore, we'll come back to you in 2-3 weeks in whatever time scale is needed. But sometimes it's just good to be honest about what you don't know. We've been doing, as an organisation, we've been doing just check-in calls with our very vulnerable residents. I think that's quite an important thing to do now. Not really offering any particular service, but just checking in with those residents. We've got about 10,000 that we have identified as being vulnerable and elderly, and that has been something that has been really well received with the residents that we've contacted so far. So I think sometimes keeping things very simple can be really useful at a time of uncertainty that we're facing now.
Right, so we've had another question come in actually. It says, it's from Samruti. Working in the private sector, I've been lucky enough to work on many projects with social housing providers. I found these projects to be the most rewarding, especially where I have got to see the projects get out of the ground and see them completed. What do you all find most rewarding about working in social housing? Now, should we speak to Leslie Ann first, please?
Oh, hold on, unmute. Unmute. Oh, God, this is technical. What I find most rewarding about working in social housing is the difference you can make to people's lives. So yeah, I get really excited about big tall buildings and selling loads of stuff and development and yeah, all good. But what really floats my boat is regeneration, but not just physical regeneration. It's regeneration of communities, of people, of growing aspirations, desires, employment, success in people's lives. So, you know, that for me is what social housing is about. It's not about profit for no purpose. It's about profit with a purpose, and you employ that profit back into the communities that you're supporting.
Has anyone else got maybe, well, here I've got a stack of questions coming through for you actually, specifically, so maybe we'll move on. Specifically a question for you, which has come through from Honey. So how do you ensure you pick the right candidates when you conduct interviews at the exec level and they are done virtually?
It's been really interesting over the last few weeks because we have had a mixed response from our clients, which is probably to be expected. So on the recruitment side, some clients have just gone, oh no, it's all too much. We kind of can't think about new recruitment at the moment. Other clients are putting a pause on processes that are underway. And then we've got a bunch of clients who are like, no, absolutely, life needs to carry on. We've got to find a new normal. We better continue. So in the last 2 weeks, we've probably appointed about 7 or 8 board members. I did a final recruitment to a chief finance officer role a couple of weeks ago. The team and I are working on bringing a final stage process for a chief executive recruitment next week. So we've got a board who are going with a virtual process in the appointment of their new chief executive. So it's actually been really amazing and inspiring because people have been incredibly flexible, able to kind of get on with things, not fearful about making bold decisions when they need to, weighing up risks. And it feels to me like we really learned something about ourselves over the last couple of weeks, because the things that we thought were impossible just 3 weeks ago are now like the new norm. So I go to a lot of board meetings, and the idea of sort of, having a virtual board meeting is an anathema to a lot of people. And now up and down the country, that's pretty much what everyone is doing. And I think the same applies to interviews. I think the interview process in a virtual space is a really interesting one. I have learned the difficult way that you can't do as many interviews in one day on Microsoft Teams as you might be able to do face to face. It's really intense. You have to really concentrate because you haven't got all of the other clues that you might have in a face-to-face situation. It's just kind of you and the people on the screen. So it does require an enormous amount of concentration. We've had to put in quite a lot of support for panel members and also for candidates to generate some confidence that this is a good way to conclude a recruitment process, that you can bring the same level of assurance, robustness and engagement. Yes, you've got to think a bit creatively about things, but a lot of people over the last couple of weeks have said that was loads better than I thought it was going to be. I actually really enjoyed it. I feel really confident. We've made a great appointment, so the feedback has been really positive. I think Honey's specific question about how do you choose the right how do you know that you're choosing the right person without sort of giving away all of my trade secrets? Some of it is about a feeling that you get. So of course there is a rigor and a robustness to the assessment and kind of helping a client to make a judgment about who is going to be the right person for their role and for their organisation. But some of it is also about feeling and instinct. And I think our role as supporters and advisors on a recruitment process is very much about facilitation. I don't think that this is Campbell Tickell making the appointment. I genuinely don't believe that. The client is making the appointment and they're relying upon our support and guidance to make the best possible decision. I think my advice to candidates when they are thinking about how do they position themselves to be that person who gets chosen is is long and varied, and it depends upon what role you're going for and where you're at in your career and who the organisation is, etc., etc. But I think my kind of top tip for candidates is make sure that you're prepared, demonstrate enthusiasm for this particular job and this particular organisation. Don't worry too much about the competition. Think about your offer to the organisation and do some practice.
Excellent tips there. Should all write those down, I think. That's amazing. So I've got a question come in for Shona, I think, really. It's from Jasmine King. But I think actually the other panelists will be able to chip into this because you all have got experience on this one. What advice would you give a young adult starting their career in social housing? She is 18 and currently undertaking a degree apprenticeship with the Housing Association.
I have no idea. I would say not being afraid to let people know that this is your first foray into the world of social housing. Like I said before, about being honest, making sure that you're a sponge to absorb all the information that people are willing to give you. You have to be willing to learn. Don't be afraid to go and ask different teams to do shadowing, learn what they do, learn how each process interlinks with each other team. Look at other organizations. Nobody holds a monopoly on good ideas. So don't be afraid to learn from external organizations, learn from different sectors as well, because they may be doing something really well that could feed into your organization. One of the things that has really benefited me in my roles in my organization is that I really wanted to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, because I understood what my corporate objectives were and what the strategy was. I was able to ask questions and make suggestions, basically saying, change this because it's not working for people, but align it to what the company's goal was, and making sure that I was able to generate buy-in. I think that's one of the things that's really helped me. I'm currently the chair of the staff committee, which we call the Information and Consultation Committee. I've been on this body for 5 years, and this is my 4th year as chair. And it's all because I want to know what my business is doing, because I want to make sure that I understand it. I'm learning how it's going to impact people and trying to make sure that I constantly keep the resident voice in mind and think about a place, where do I want to work? How can I influence the people around me? And how can I continue to be part of one big team rather than the 4 people that I might be working with right now? So it's literally throwing yourself into the ring and saying, I should be in that room because I have something to say, and whatever I have to say is valid, irrespective of your age. Age doesn't matter. Everybody's going to be willing to learn. And as long as you keep doing that, you'll be able to fly in an organization.
Yeah, did you have something to add to that one?
Yeah, Sharon is so right. So every promotion, every job I ever got was because I volunteered to help my boss sort out their nonsense. And actually, if you're the person that has the consumer, customer, resident, tenant, God knows what we call people these days, that if you're the person that has that in your heart, you will be the person that will succeed. So, you know, you just need to make sure that you're listening to your customers, and then you're bringing that voice back into the decision making of the organization. And then you go volunteer to do extra work, to do senior work. It's not all about pay, is it? But, you know, hey, I was a single mum. That was a bit tough about not being all about pay. But, you know, go and volunteer and make people who make decisions listen to the voice of customers, and you be that conduit for customers.
I think I'd probably just add to that that curiosity is so important. Shonna's really shown that she is a curious individual. I think it's certainly something that has been useful to me in my career, just asking questions and not being afraid to ask those questions. Sometimes we kind of think, you're in a meeting and think, oh, I won't ask that, you know. or you think, no, actually, I will ask it, and you ask it, and the number of people around you that think, I'm so glad you asked that.
Just
I'm
jump
so
in
glad.
and ask the questions.
Yes, absolutely. It's so important. I think the other thing is about approaching people and asking them if they can spare 10 minutes of their time to talk to you and give you some advice. You'd be amazed at how many people will do that if you ask them.
But people love to be asked about their experience, don't they?
People do. People want to share their experience.
Yeah, we're all incredibly flattered when anybody asks us about our experience, and we love to show off. So all good. Go forth and ask.
Yes, and I think
exposure. Sorry, Jackie.
Yeah, just on volunteering. I think the other thing is, I mean, quite early in my career, I became quite frustrated with not fully understanding why the business made certain decisions. And I think particularly in development, when you think, I've got this fantastic scheme, this fantastic site, why can't we do it? And so I actually applied to join a board at a very early stage in my career. And again, I think I was a bit of an upstart, and I just thought, I'll try it. I can only say no. And I got onto a board, and it just shifted the way I thought about the work I did every day, because I became exposed to how that organisation ran, why it was so important that it made certain decisions at certain times, what its constraints were, what its opportunities were. And it's just, it was so symbiotic, because I was able to bring my experience as a practitioner to that board, and I was able to take away my experience as a board member and apply it to my day job. So I think trying to find something that will give you a strategic perspective. It doesn't have to be in housing. It could be a charity. It could be a local group. It could be anything, but it will give you a different perspective about how you think about your role and how you think about organisations and how they function.
Sorry, go out. Yeah.
I was going to add, and Jackie articulated it much better than I could. I think exposure is really important. So even if you feel a little bit unconfident about asking people for support, why don't you just ask them if you can go to something? Next time you go to the external meeting with the local authority to talk about X, can I come with you? I'll take the minutes for you if that will help. I'll carry your briefcase for you if that will help. I'll do you a little follow-up notes after that will help. And just kind of put yourself in situations. And I'd echo what Jackie has said as well about finding different experiences. I think the non-executive role in the not-for-profit sector is a minefield of kind of information and experience, and having some exposure at that level will definitely give you a different perspective. In the last couple of years, we've been trying to push really hard, getting some of our housing clients to think more proactively about succession planning on boards. And we have been pushing for clients to take people who have never been on a board before. And that often means taking somebody younger. Quite naturally, other diversity characteristics will follow. So kind of more BME people, more women. And when I kind of got in touch with somebody who we appointed to a subcommittee about a year and a half ago, and I could not believe the change in her. It was absolutely incredible, and she had sucked an enormous amount from that kind of experience in the short time that she had been there, and it had really given her a different kind of zip. It was amazing to see. So I think exposure and putting yourself in different situations is also a really good way forward.
And it grows exponentially. So I remember the very first time I presented a report to the housing committee at the London Borough of Enfield, Ealing, God knows where it was. I had to sit on my hands because I was shaking so much. And I was like, thank God I don't have to stand up, because I couldn't be able to read this report because my hands were shaking so much. And, you know, and I've moved to a world where I'd speak to, you know, conferences of 8,000, 10,000 people. Hey, I did one in bloody French the other day. And you kind of, you just move through that cycle, but you have to get on the ladder at the beginning. And somebody needs to give you the chance to get on that ladder at the beginning. You know, I remember thinking, why doesn't everybody think about sheltered housing? And having no understanding of homelessness or housing need or development or repairs. You know, I just, you know, you are where you are in your career, but you need to keep looking up and thinking there's something more to this than just the little bit that you do. Sorry, rant over.
I
The
think,
other thing
sorry,
is
just
always looking around what other teams, what other people are doing who are on the same level as you. It doesn't always have to be above. You don't have to be the CEO to be a leader. So it's just thinking about, well, I know I can tell this person that thing, and it's gonna spread. You have to make yourself uncomfortable to kind of push yourself. I remember one of the biggest things that I got asked to do was to present at our staff conference, which was 500 people, and I had to do a fake ballroom dance on stage, and I thought, dear Lord, what am I going to do? And I did a model strut to Spice Girls, Spice Up Your Life to the stage, did this dance with somebody, and I was physically ill afterwards. Nobody would have guessed at the time, and I got really good feedback, but thinking, what on earth am I doing? And what that put me in, made me feel more comfortable doing. My comfort zone got way bigger. So when it came to delivering my 5-minute presentation at the National Housing Summit, I've already delivered to 500 people. This 40 or 50 people, 100 people, it was all a blur. I don't know how many people are in the room. It's just another thing I've done. But it's because I made myself uncomfortable when I was asked to make myself uncomfortable. You have to push yourself and do that as well.
Yeah, I think one thing, the last thing I'd add to that is that you have a perspective. Being when you're young, coming into a workplace, you bring an incredible experience, and you should use that. You know, we are living in a world that is technologically savvy, where my 9-year-old has got, he's on something upstairs now. I've got no idea what it is, but I've got to try and learn about it. I go onto social media just so that I can keep up with him, because I think by the time he's 15, it's going to be probably some chip in your eyeball that will be the social media equivalent. So being current is really important, and no one is more current than younger people. So there are quite a few organizations that have this idea of reverse mentoring, where you have someone right at the top of the organization who actually has a mentor who's quite young, and they want to understand perspective, they want to understand what is important to certain age groups, and so you bring with you an experience, so use that in your workplace.
Well, I think we've covered that subject. I can't even remember what the question was now, but that was an amazing discussion that it kicked off. There is actually a question that's really on a similar vein, which actually came just in after this one, and it's from Vicky, again in North Wales. And she says, like most of you, housing was not a sector that she originally considered. And she has a comms and marketing background, but has ended up as a customer engagement and marketing manager. And she says, is it worth getting a housing related qualification or similar to support her development in other areas of the housing sector? So I suppose, Leslie-Ann, sort of is very similar to what you were describing, where you were encouraged to do so.
No, I don't know. Hashida, my training and development colleague at the London Borough Ealing, sent me off for dispatched me to a management qualification, and I think that's probably, I don't want to disrespect anybody, but I think a general management qualification is probably better than a housing specific qualification. I always felt a bit inadequate that I hadn't got a kind of housing, degree, blah blah, and always thought I should do that online thing with the Institute of Housing, but couldn't quite get myself there. I think being able to manage stuff, being able to manage people, being able to manage projects was probably more important than being able to manage housing. I still to this day wouldn't know how to evict somebody, but I had staff who would, so all good. So I think a general management qualification is probably the better option. And I'm sorry for everybody that I've just upset with that statement.
Can I come in here, Eleanor? So we, in the recruitment work that we do, we spend a lot of time with clients trying to get them to be really clear about what it is that they're looking for with this vacant role. And the conversation often starts with qualifications, but it often ends with experience is more important. I think that if you are going to go for a qualification, then do it because you really want to learn something, and do it because learning in a structured way, in a supportive way, is going to be really positive for you. I think the idea that you need a particular qualification to go for a particular role is becoming less relevant, because generally, and particularly at kind of executive level, generally we're looking for people who have got a rounded offer, and your technical insight becomes a little less important. Obviously, if you're going to be a surveyor, then you're going to need some kind of professional qualification, but I think it probably sort of matters a little bit less the higher up you go. I say do it for the act of learning, because I think learning something new is fantastic. It gives you an amazing buzz. It kind of shows you that you're capable of things that you didn't think you were capable of. I think choosing to learn as an adult whilst holding down a full-time job and having a busy life is an incredible commitment. So don't take it lightly, but make sure that you get something more from it, rather than just the fact that you can now name a qualification. I think do something because it feels purposeful and relevant. I think this is Vicky from Wales who's asking this question, isn't it? Yeah. Vicky, I was really interested in what you said about your background. I'm going to be advertising a role for a large national housing association in a couple of days' time, and I think you should call me about it.
Ah, there you go, Becky, picking up jobs on the webinar. Amazing. Okay. We've got a question here from Jenny Osborne. She says, most of you have spoken about the importance of certain people in your careers, who may be mentors or inspiration. How would panelists see we can do more of that in a community sense to inspire, mentor, advise women living in our communities who want to work in our sector and be community activists? Who would like to start us off? Maybe Jackie, could you take this one?
Yeah, I think it's about finding a local passion, I think, and becoming involved in that. I do feel a sense of responsibility. I realise I've been quite fortunate in the experience I have, and I really feel it's important to share that. And I found something a few years ago. I found something local which was quite passionate to me. It was around education, and I became involved in a group where I live that was interested in setting up a primary school. And it was quite an incredible experience, because it was quite personal to me, because I had a young child, and we had just been through an experience of not getting a school locally. So it was quite personal, but I wasn't particularly interested in it for my child, because we had to make other arrangements for him. But I was so enraged about it that I became involved in this local group via our local Facebook page. And the number of people involved in that, there were quite a lot of women in that group, quite a few who, when they started, they're like, oh, I just thought I'd answer this and see if I could help out, but became so vital to our group in terms of the skills that they were able to bring. So I think it's about finding something local, something that you have a passion for, and getting involved in it, that you can't not get involved. And I think by getting involved, you exposing yourself to that group inspires others to think, well, actually, it's not as hard as I thought it would be. It's not as inaccessible as I thought it would be, because this person's really approachable. I could do what they do. That would be the way that from my experience, that would be how I would look at it.
That's great. And has anyone else got anything to contribute to that one?
I think
Shona.
Yeah, can I?
Shona and Joe. Shona, do you want to start?
Yeah, I would say that it comes by showing the people who already exist in your organization first, and celebrating them. Celebrate them internally first, because you want to build like a community network inside your own organization first. So then they're all singing about what everybody's doing, and you're thinking about the small thing that one person's done, and be like, do you know what, that's really good. We should tell the whole world about this, and then you put it on your intranet, you put it on your actual website, you put it on your social media. Start to celebrate the people who work within your organization first, because when you start to expose the teams that are delivering the services, people on the outside to say, that person looks like me. When you look at housing associations in general, you think it's so diverse, but the diversity doesn't exist at the top. So if you start to breed it and say, look, there's women who are working in this organization, who are surveyors, who are doing architecture, they're working in construction. Start to think about the diversity in that way. I would love to walk into an organization and see people who look exactly like me. So if you start to show people on the outside, this is what the heart of your organization looks like, then they're going to want to join into that, and then they're more likely to start to sing your praises as well. So the diversity starts to breed quite organically, just because people who are delivering the services are actually seen.
Yeah, I'd agree wholeheartedly with that. It's so interesting when you turn up to something and people aren't expecting to see you. They're like, oh, you're not what I was expecting. You're not what I was expecting. And I take pride in that. I think, oh, well, I'm glad I wasn't what you're expecting. And so you're right, that exposure, whether it's through your PR, through actually seeing people to represent your organization, and people actually seeing that organization is the makeup is so incredible. I'm curious about it. I want to go and find out more.
Can I just add there, Eleanor? I think it is really important that we all take responsibility to reflect upon the support that has helped us, and then to pay that back. So you need to kind of, you want to be the person who's benefited from that, but you also want to be the person who makes sure that other people benefit. And I think particularly for women, we do a lot of that and we don't even realize that we're doing it. I think that sometimes our male colleagues are really good at telling us, I'm a mentor and I'm a this and I'm a that. And I think women quite naturally do those things and don't always give themselves the credit. So the next time somebody tells you that you're a role model, don't go, oh no, that's not me. Embrace it and say, yeah, I think I am. I think that's ever so important. The questioner sort of said something about community activism. After Grenfell happened, I wondered if we would see a quite material change in the value of community activism in our sector. And now, of course, we're living in these extraordinary times. And I think there are some important questions for housing providers about how we listen to and how we reach those voices that are often less heard. I think it puts a real, and you know, Sean is the real expert in this, but I think it puts a real onus on housing providers to be able to kind of have some confidence that they are hearing all voices, even unpopular ones. That feels extremely important at the moment. And I think if you are the type of person who's thinking about getting involved in things, I think sometimes the getting started is really difficult, but most of the people that I meet, once they've got started, they've loved it. So actually give yourself a little bit of a kicking if that's what's necessary to kind of get you through the door to go to a drop-in session or get in touch with your community centre or playgroup or whatever it may be. I think I meet people in my career who find that kind of stuff really addictive, and often once people get going, it's really hard to stop them. So just do the thing that you need to do to get started. And I genuinely think we might see a really kind of significant shift in terms of what we value as community activism in this country.
There's Leanne, you're on mute. Yeah, go ahead.
Am I on mute? No, I don't think so.
No, you're not now. No, go ahead.
What we need to do is make sure that those starts turn up to be something, grow into something more significant. I am really, really, really proud to be on the board of a housing association that has, a black chair, a black CEO. Well, sorry, non-white. I have no idea what the political correctness of all this nonsense is. But we have people that are not white leading our organisation that is delivering services to people that look like the leadership of the organisation. And, we have more women than blokes on the board, and yeah, we have some very clever men, whatever. But actually, stop laughing. But, you know, actually, we are an organisation that reflects the values and the residency of our tenants. And the only way we will ever deliver relevant and appropriate services is if we deliver those by very clever people that just happen to be not white, not blokes, not straight, whatever. You know, we reflect on our board the diversity of our residents, and I am so proud to be a member of Metropolitan Thames Valley's board, because somehow we're sort of getting it right.
Sarah, did you have something to add there, or did I miss that? No. Thank you. That's really interesting. I think we have had so many questions, obviously, about COVID, and so didn't want to focus on it today. But there's some lovely questions here. One come from Honey, which says, COVID-19 is bringing challenges for the housing sector. And what are the opportunities, in your opinion? Sarah, can I start off with you on that?
It is interesting, isn't it? I feel like talking to some of my clients that they've delivered the transformation that they've spent the last 2 years trying to deliver with an awful lot of money, and they've managed to achieve it in a couple of days with very little sort of added investment. So there's something extraordinary, isn't there, about sort of people being able to kind of embrace change very, very quickly when you absolutely have to. So I think for me, the opportunity is to take a bit of time when we hopefully come out the other side to really reflect upon what it is that we've learned. I think there's an opportunity to kind of challenge ourselves to say that life shouldn't just carry on as normal, that we are likely to kind of formulate a new normal. And that's about our kind of relationships with each other and how we work. That's about our relationships with our customers and how they access things and how they engage things. So I think for me, the opportunity is more about what it is that we learn about ourselves. I think, of course, there will inevitably be big strategic change in the sector. Unfortunately, some small organisations, particularly those working in care and support, and we're seeing this a lot with our charity clients, are just folding overnight. You know, they were providing incredibly valuable services just a couple of weeks ago. Their services have never been so much in demand, and actually they just can't carry on, which is heartbreaking. And I think those things should change us. Those reflections should challenge us to think differently. So I think the shape of the sector will inevitably change. I think we will have to ask ourselves sort of tougher questions about efficiency. We don't really know this government's plans for social housing. I think we might have an impression that they're not our kind of biggest fan, but of course they've been preoccupied by other things. I think when we come out the other side and they start to make some announcements about what's their kind of expectations for the social housing sector, we need to kind of be really prepared. I think we're going to need some real sector resilience around that. So I think there are both opportunities to learn. I think it's also about getting much ready for what might be a much tougher and more hostile environment.
Jackie, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. And I think that there is the whole idea of efficiency is something that is going to come to the fore much more. We've been working remotely for, I think this is week 4, might be week 5 for me, I can't quite recall, but the amount of work, the productivity level that we've been able to achieve in this time has been quite tremendous, and that's to do with technology and being enabled, but also it's about necessity, and necessity being, you know, that saying, necessity the mother of invention, has never been more true. I think for particularly for my part of our industry, there have been some real mind shifts around the way that people work, and I think that is going to be hugely relevant for women in any industry. I have an in-house construction team full of typical construction types, quite a lot of men, but quite a good few women, very kind, very robust, strong women, which I love. If you'd spoken to them 2 months ago and said, oh, we'll be able to do a lot of our meetings, a lot of our work remotely, and there'll be no drop in productivity. There would have been, yeah, whatever. They're used to just turning up, they're used to presenteeism, they're used to getting in at 6:30 in the morning, and that's how you show that you're effective. Now they're all doing meetings remotely. They're having estimating meetings remotely. They're having project review meetings remotely, and they're getting it done. Okay, our sites are closed. We can't actually put one brick on top of another at this time, but everything else around that part of our operation is carrying on. And I think that the fact that we can work remotely effectively is going to give us all pause for thought when we return to whatever normal looks like.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to pause on the questions just for 2 seconds and ask all of our participants, everyone that's listening to the webinar as we come through into the last 15 minutes or so. Could you start sending us through the chat function, maybe just one word to summarise how the seminar has made you feel, or perhaps the top tip that you've taken out, and I'll reflect those back to you all as we just move into our last questions here. So we unfortunately got so many questions that we haven't been able to cover, which is a real shame. But to sort of maybe end on some light-hearted notes, I've got a question from Kenny. He says, I wonder if you could describe a pivotal moment in your career which was a catalyst for change, and what transferable skills came out of that. Perhaps could we start with you, Shona?
So one of the things that was really beneficial to me, I mean, I came out of it a completely different person, was the HDN mentoring program. It was a combination of a classroom mentality of being able to learn different things, plus my external coach being from a different organization who was really invested in wanting to support me in developing myself, because he was also learning at the same time. What I loved about that was, at the time, I had opportunities to use the skills I had learned and actually see the difference from them. One of the things that my mentor at the time said to me is, you know, what's your goals? What's your vision? And I had no idea. I didn't know where I wanted to go. And he said, that doesn't matter then, because the beauty is in the journey. It doesn't matter which path you take, because you don't know what your goal is. So continue to learn. And to be honest, I really started to enjoy that part of learning. And then I thought, well, I need to learn about myself, because I don't know who I am. And at that point I think I was 24 or 25. And so to think that at that age, I still didn't know who I really was. I did a trip to Portugal by myself. I sat on a beach that was absolutely freezing cold, reading a book called Ice Cream for Breakfast, which was about using your inner child to deal with adult problems. And when I started to think, well, okay, I just need to stop worrying about everything and just push myself, everything became much easier, and my comfort zone got way bigger, and now I'm speaking to you from the comfort of my bedroom. So it's all those kind of different things that feed in just to have fun and try.
And Leslie, did you have something to contribute?
So I think my life experiences, you don't have to work for an arse. So, sorry, that was a bit rude. But do you know, value what you're worth and go for it, because there are many people that will stand in your way, but there are also many people that will help you on your way. So don't work for an arse. Do what the husband said, get a new job and move on if something isn't working for you. You know, as women, we're really, really good people. We do a really, really amazing, good job. We're single moms, we're parents, we're all that stuff that we are, but actually we're very, very valuable. So make sure you exploit the value of you, and you can be whatever you want to be.
Can I add something there, Eleanor? Because I think I had a pivotal moment yesterday. And I think my overall message is, yeah, you might be experiencing pivotal moments and not even know that they're pivotal. So yesterday I was giving some feedback to a candidate. She had applied for her first chief executive role. She'd got onto the long list. She'd done a good interview, but unfortunately she didn't make the shortlist. And so I was giving her some feedback. And I kind of, you know, said some things which I hoped were going to be helpful, and she kind of asked me some really good questions. So we had a good sort of open conversation. And at the end of it, she said, "That is the best feedback I have ever had." And I was like, wow, okay, well, that's interesting. And she was like, no, I really want you to hear what I'm saying. That's the best feedback I've ever had. And these are the reasons why it's really good. And I managed to kind of stop myself from going, oh, you know, that's just me, that's my job, that's just what I do. And I sort of made myself really listen to the compliment, and it was a compliment. And I felt amazing after. And because I'm working from home, obviously I went next door into the kitchen to tell my husband about it straight away. And he was like, "You're an idiot." And I was like, "What do you mean I'm an idiot?" And he was like, "People say that to you all the time, and you just go, oh, that's just my job. Like somehow you're not allowed to kind of be amazing in the job that you have." And I was like, wow, okay, I hadn't kind of really thought of it in that way. So yeah, I think I had a pivotal moment yesterday.
That's amazing. And you heard the feedback for the first time by the sounds of things that you've been told for ages. We're having some absolutely lovely comments come through from people who are listening. Inspiring, motivational. Inspiring is what we set out to do, so that's good. People are saying positivity, and they feel really heartened to hear about the importance of understanding and people being such a valued skill. A wonderful hour of inspirational and informative discussions. Thank you. Someone, Helen White says, I'm 42 and I often have no idea who I am and what I'm trying to do. So there we go. The key message I have picked out is give yourself a kick and get uncomfortable. Judy Wilson says this has been exhilarating and uplifting and some great stories for us all. So we've had some lovely feedback here, and it just keeps coming, appreciative and reflectful. So I think just to sort of finish off, we've just had a final question come through from Helen Evans. It's sort of directed at Gira, to be honest, but perhaps the rest of you can give some guidance as well. She says she's been in housing for 21 years and feels very inspired that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. She says, I'm really keen to get involved, change a job role and go with another housing provider or organisation. So, i.e. a board member position. And can you give her some good advice to sort of push herself to do this?
Yes, this isn't Helen Evans, my landlady, is it? And Shauna's boss. I'm assuming it's another Helen Evans, because Network Homes are our landlord, although obviously neither Shauna nor I are in the office building. Anyway, thank you, Helen, for that question. I think it's a really good one, because often when I have these types of conversations in our sector, there's always a group of women at the end of a session who want to come up and have a private chat with me. 80 or 90% of the time, they're BME women who are, you know, they've been the housing officer for 20 years or the team leader for 25 years, and they're looking for the next step up and feel like that they just kind of can't seem to get a break. And so I think it is really important that the sector kind of challenges itself about how we nurture and develop the talent that we've got and how we attract new talent coming in. I think in terms of the position that Helen is in, she's clearly got a wealth of experience to offer. And I think she kind of owes it to herself to do something with that. So I'm sure she does a fantastic kind of job in her day-to-day role, but it feels to me like what she's saying is, I think I've got something more to give. So I think, Helen, it's a little bit of a light touch kick, as in like, get your ass in gear and do something, and just apply for some things, have some conversations with people, go and talk to some people and say, I'm thinking of joining a board. Have you got anything? Could I come and observe a board meeting and get a feel for what it's like? the not-for-profit sector is incredibly diverse, and obviously social housing is a part of that. Loads of local charities, particularly at the moment because they're having a really tough time, would be amazed to get somebody with your skills, with your insight. And so don't limit yourself to kind of thinking about non-executive roles just in social housing. I think this is an opportunity to kind of look a little bit more broadly. I would also say that go for some things. You won't be successful all of the time, but always take the opportunity to learn. Always ask for feedback. And if your recruiter or your organisation is kind of being a bit mealy-mouthed about the kind of the feedback, you know, people say things like, oh, we thought you were really great, but not the right fit, you know, and that kind of sort of nonsense. Be a bit challenging and say, look, be really open and honest with me because I really want to learn from this experience. So make yourself feel a little bit vulnerable, because the reward will be that much greater.
Leslie, did you have just something to add there?
Yeah, I did. So I couldn't agree more with Gira's recitation. You absolutely need to put yourself out there. You know, if you want to be a non-exec, you have to kind of go forth and apply. And it's not always comfortable, but actually, you know, get out there and do it, because people that work in the social housing sector, the voluntary sector, you know, the whole kind of NHS thing, have got so many skills to give. So get out there and apply, and sooner or later somebody will work out that you're worth it. And once you have one role, there will be many, many other roles that follow. But getting the first one is the really difficult one. So, but don't be deterred. Get out there and do it.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add as well? My position as being chair of our staff committee, I'm not a board member, but there's literally just been approval for the position to be part of the committees that exist underneath the actual board. So you're still able to get exposure to the board itself and learn about what actually happens. So I observe the board meeting just to get a feel for, you know, what are they talking about? How do they have these discussions? How do they give approval for a decision that's about millions of pounds, when I'm sitting there thinking I need to change the comma in this report? Some of the things that really actually matter, you have to start to put to the back of your brain and just say, yep, I'm going to try it, see what happens. If they say no, what happens? Do you die? No. So just continue to make yourself uncomfortable in putting yourself in that position in the first place.
Amazing. Okay, well, we're very close to our end point today. So I'm just going to ask each of our panelists to give their very short thought about sort of what's your key takeout, what's been meaningful out of this discussion for you. Jacqueline, could I ask you to start?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a reminder to always step out of your comfort zone. It's something I've done throughout my career. I've probably become a little bit complacent, and I've got to remind myself that you've got to challenge yourself every day. I attended something quite a few years ago by a guy called Jim Lawless, who had this idea of taming tigers, and one of the principles he had was do something that scares you every day. So I think what I take away is I'm going to go and find out what my son is doing on his iPad, what new app he has learnt today, and probably load it onto my phone.
Amazing. And Shona, could you just say a few words?
So I'm not sure if my takeaway comes from the panel or from this morning, where I saw Captain Tom Moore complete his 100th lap for raising money for the NHS charities. That was something that came back just thinking, do you know what? Every single one of us is able to make a difference. You can have the smallest goal and it can be infectious to other people. So reading the comments and seeing that people have found what we've been talking about inspiring and empowering. We're all exactly the same. We all have different challenges. We're all going through different things. It's just about what are you going to do about it? What's within your control to really pull yourself out of it? Captain Tom Moore did something and he was able to make a big difference. So we can all do the exact same thing in our personal lives, which lead into our professional lives.
Amazing. And someone's, Lisa Williams just said, everyone needs to run their 100 laps. I like that a lot. Leslie Ann, have you got a couple of words to say just to finish things up?
I just think everybody needs to do what they can do. And, you know, we all need to push ourselves just a little bit. These are incredibly difficult times. And it would be easy to just stay in your PJs all day and kind of not do a lot. But actually, you know, strike yourself up and get on with it. So housing is so, oh, why are you drinking that? Housing is so important to people, you know, and I'm really amazingly fortunate to live in a big house with a garden. But I could be somebody very different, and we need to kind of, as housing professionals, be responsible for people that don't live in big houses with gardens. So I love you all. Big kiss.
Thank you very much, Lillian. Kira, would you like to just finish that off first?
Yeah, I think I've got three things that I would highlight. We are living in extraordinary times, and I think it was Honey who said, what are the kind of opportunities? I think this is a good time to kind of do some reflection and kind of take a step back and ask yourself some questions about where you're at and where you want to be, and challenge yourself to kind of really think about what is it that I'm going to do to get there. I think the second thing I would say is that this is my personal takeaway, but what we're doing now is real work. I think sometimes we kind of behave like these things are a luxury, or, oh no, I'm too busy kind of doing other things and I don't have time to kind of network, I don't have time to talk, I don't have time to kind of support others or receive support. And I think we need to give ourselves some legitimacy that actually this is our real work. This kind of makes us all kind of better people and better people in our jobs. So that's my second thing. And my third thing is, you know, the recruitment market is inevitably going to be a little bit quieter, but I suspect not for very long. So if you're the person who's thinking about your career path, you've been umming and ahhing about whether to apply for roles or not, now is a really good time to get your CV out, do some work on it, brush up on your kind of potential supporting statement. You kind of owe it to yourself to work on yourself in order to be match fit for the next selection process that comes along. And this is a really great time to do that. So those are my three things.
That's amazing. Well, amazing, inspirational. And I think we can learn a lot from today's panel. It's been really interesting. And I think that draws things to a close. So hopefully everyone who's listening has got something out of this. I think the go forth and ask is what really comes out of it for me. And say yes. I think everyone hopefully will join me in giving our panellists a virtual round of applause and saying a massive thank you to you.
Well done, everyone.
We've achieved definitely what we set out to do, with some stories of inspiration and positive messages. So for those of you who aren't members of Wish, check us out. It's www.wishgb.co.uk. And we would really appreciate your feedback from today's webinar. So there should be a poll which Tracy is going to run.
I'm not going to run the poll. I'm actually going to ask people to put things in the chat box. So if you could just write into the chat box whether this was a good time of day. So was this the right time of day to run this session? So that's a yes or a no from everybody. And the second thing is, going forward, we want to support our network, we want to support our members. We realise it's difficult, it's a difficult time. Not everybody's in the office, of course, they're all at home working remotely. Some people have been furloughed, so they're not maybe getting access, and we need to look after everybody in this time. So we really need to know how we're going to get to people, how we're going to communicate, how we're going to support each other when we're not all around the fountain drinking water and having that contact with each other. So I would like to ask you to just put into the chat box, how do we keep in contact with you? who are you in contact with on a social level from your work, your colleagues that you can reach out to? And I would seriously ask you, if we're in contact with you, please pass on our invites to people that do not have access, because we want to support everybody. So any ideas you've got for that, just put it in the chat box. We've got everybody's emails from signing up to this webinar. So we will send you out a link to a recording. Please share that with people that have not been fortunate enough to hear these fantastic women. Yeah, and that's really it from me. It's about supporting our whole network, the people that have been furloughed and others that are still sort of carrying the workload and trying to keep things going. So I think that's it for me.
And this will go on our YouTube channel and Facebook. So for those that you're asking, it will be on social media as well. So I think we'll leave it there. Is that right?
Yeah. So
Thank you very much.
Be brave, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.